Hello and welcome to the F1 Racing League. We have the second division on PC this weekend, who are racing at the famous Monza. As you can see from the standings, Mill has a very nice 69 points, a full race lead ahead of Nordi and Dunt Van Club in the two Haas cars. As we go to have a look at the track, we can see the 11 turns of the extremely fast Monza, 4 to the left, 7 to the right, and many chicanes to trip all of our drivers up today. Monza is of course known as the Temple of Speed, being famous for having the fastest top speed on the entire calendar, with the longest start-finish straight we've seen in F1, as all of the cars barrel out of the pits here. Let's get some spectator stuff up. Yeah. There we go. So, as we see a lot of cars go on the outlap, one thing that I do notice is that the two McLarens of Cruisergenes and Ricciardo are out at the exact same time, possibly looking for one driver to give the other a tow around this track, where the leading car punches a hole in the air, giving a very nice slipstream effect to the car behind. It's so powerful around this track, it could be a few tenths off the time of the trailing car. Also for this run, Ricciardo has got a lucky spot here with Cruisergenes having to do a lot of work on this. So let's follow on the trailing car for this first lap of the Monza circuit. 3.8 miles. And it takes barely 80 seconds. Now across the line they go. So we want to get a very good exit out of Parabolica. To carry as much speed as possible for this long start-finish straight, although you cannot go outside the line because it will invalidate the next lap as well as the current lap. And the hard braking zone into the first chicane. So crucial to get an exit here because it's another long flat-out section around turn 3, Curva Grande. And it looked quite tidy there for Ricciardo. A little wiggle on the exit, but it's okay. Now another hard braking zone into the Della Rocha chicane. Gotta be careful to not take too much of the gravel on the outside, he manages it well. And now the two fast right-handers of the Lesmo curves. There's the first one, very nice on the exit, and the second, a lot of camber to throw you around the corner and stay well within the track limits there. Now a long run down the DRS straight to the infamous Ascari chicane, named so after Alberto Ascari, who died at this corner, which is quite grim. Oh, a very bad run out in turn 9 there, had to take a lot more of the curve than he would have wanted. A slow run through that complex. Now, a run down into Parabolica, one of the fastest corners on the calendar. You've got to get on the power so early to throw yourself around. Be careful to not stray over that white line. Cruisergenes sets a 119.9, Ricciardo sets a 120.9. The benefit of the tow really not doing much for him there. As Weltering sets a 20.5 to go into second place here. Nordi setting a 20.0. And Mill setting the new mark with a 19.7. We will hop on board with, I believe, Tracy, who has invalidated. Let's see how Turboswerve is doing. Turboswerve is not invalidated. So we shall see how fast this lap is. Running through Parabolica. Going nice and wide, touching the outside curb, but not straying over the line. And that will be a 20.2. It's a nice banter lap there for the two Red Bulls. There's a couple more drivers now break into the 119s. It's looking to be a very competitive qualifying session. It seems that every car out on track has completed a lap. It looks like the McLarens are not going for 2 in a row, and so it's likely we will see all the cars pull into the pits to prepare for our next run around the circuit. We did have a yellow flag briefly at Ascari. It looks like all the cars have survived whatever happened there. Whether there's a bit of front wing missing, we don't know, but of course they will pull into the pits, so it isn't much concern to anyone. As we do have a couple of drivers already back out on track, Not Spy and Jazzy Binman, who did not get a valid lap set in that first run, have gone out very early to try and set a new banker lap. Just coming around the Lesmo curve on that outlap now. Spy has been given the lead. Jazzy Binman possibly looking to get a toe there. Might be a bit of a cheeky move there. But let's ride on board with Not Spy for this lap with Monza, who has the entire track himself in that black Mercedes. Nice run out of Parabolic to start the lap, being cautious on the outside, but running very well across the line to start the lap. Now you're talking about the pits here, you're really looking to get me right on the rev limiter as you brake for this corner. About the 100 meter, taking a lot of the curve in turn 1, but being a bit more cautious on the curve of turn 2, so you don't get unsettled on the exit for this 100 curve around it. Now, as much as this is a corner, you really do not have to worry about the line. You want to stay as tight as possible for the shortest distance before the run into the Delaroche chicane, where you can take a fair bit of curve, but you have to be careful on the exit to not spin on the gravel. Now the Lesmo's very fast corners, you want to be committing as fully as possible straight wheel early on the exit. And there we go, 2 very clean corners there. So we head down the back straight with DRS assistance into Ascari, which is definitely the trickiest corner on this track. It takes a lot of curve on the first 2. From that final curve can really unsettle the car. Not Spy has taken it very clean. There is a car ahead, a bit of a toe around Parabolic here, which is very fortunate. We shall see if it helps. Touching the inside curve slightly there, and once again, very safe line through Parabolic, does not invalidate, and that will be a 119.8, putting him into 3rd place provisionally, right behind his Mercedes teammate. What a lap there from Not a Spy. Jazzy Binman set a 121.5. We will see how prune Tracy is getting on here. Who was the 3rd car out of the pits of the section block. It seems that everyone has decided to head out for their second runs here. Such high speed. That is running the left-hand wheels right on the white line. Very, very happy with that line. At 20.2, Cruise Racing to P7. Now, who shall we hop on board? We shall put Cruiser Jenez, who we neglected in the first run because we expected Ricciardo to be running the faster lap in the slipstream. That didn't end up working out, and we have Kate Badge, who has had an issue coming out of the pit, it looks like. The yellow flag on the Vetvio chicane. The front wing looks to be intact, so hopefully there was no contact there, and he will be okay to use this outlap to lead on to a flyer, to hopefully improve and possibly take provisional P1 here with 8 minutes to go in the session. Melee has not improved on that 119.7. We will hop on board with Tracy. who is just exiting Ascari on a lap that looks valid, but is not looking to be very fast when I look at it. That is not competitive time, and we're slightly aborted and we're running into the pits here. Indeed. So, ran on board with Not Spy earlier. We'll hop on the other Mercedes here and see how Kate Bad fares in his second flying lap. Very nice line out of Parabolica there, taking as much of the track as possible for this long run down into turn 1. You've got to be so careful on the brakes here. A little bit over and you can complete the mesh line. There's a bit of a lock up there, but it doesn't seem to have affected him too much, and he's got a decent run out here. Not Spy came out of the pits behind Kate Bad here, so Kate was hoping to get Not Spy out ahead to have a bit of a tow around this lap. Slight tap of the gravel there, but everything seems to be stable. Although this lap has to be very good to improve on that P2 that is currently running. Now, the DRS hop opens again down this back straight before we head into Ascari. He's 2/10 up at the second sector split, but really this corner needs to be crucial, and that looked like a very clean run through Ascari. This could be a provisional pole lap. We will see how the run is through Parabolica. It's the brakes, already back on the throttle, and he's playing it very safe on the outside there to make sure it doesn't invalidate. And so 1:29.2, taking provisional pole by more than 4/10 for a mil there. Not Spy just behind, now starting his final lap, hoping to possibly make a Mercedes 1-2 here. Just a front row lockout, very much like what we've seen in the real Formula 1 this season. Very tidy Retvia chicane, and now the sweeping run through Curva Grande. Elsewhere on the track, we have a slight tussle at Ascari to see who will take the position. Turboswerve possibly getting caught up behind Prue and Tracy there on a flying lap, it looks like. Although we do not know if that is the case. Not Spy is up a 1/10.5 heading into Ascari. Takes a big chunk out of that final curve, but keeps the car steady. You've got to keep your steering wheel as straight as possible while running over that to make sure that you don't have any problems. Now, Not Spy running around Parabolica with a bit of tow assistance from Kate Bad on his in lap. We'll see how this fares. Kate Bad has stayed out, in fact, and Not Spy to 1:19.5, slotting into second place behind his teammate. And Mercedes currently have a front row lockout. I think Kate Bad might have stayed out there just to give that extra tow to his teammate across the line there. Fantastic teamwork by the Mercedes. Now, currently, the two Renaults are not faring very well at all, with Jesse Binman more than a second, on 2 seconds off the pace and a second away from the nearest competitor, and One Goal, One Dream yet to set a valid lap around this track with only 4 minutes to go. So we'll follow along with this keyboard warrior and see what he can do around this 3.8 mile track. That was definitely not the best line through that first chicane. Ran very deep into turn 1 and had to take it much slower through the second part of that chicane. But the lap is valid, so he'll definitely be looking to keep this as sensible as possible. That a bit of an early turn in there. It's very difficult to get those inputs precise while playing on keyboard. I don't know how he does it. We have to run through these two reservoirs. Unfortunately, we won't have a delta to compare against here, so I don't know whether that will place till he crosses the line. And it seems like he's backing off. Definitely not happy with that first part of the lap. Possibly to preserve the tyres for another run here, which is there probably won't be the time. There should be the time to go into pits and come back out again, but definitely won't want to be banking on that. So he'll only have one shot then. Rounding Parabolica. I expect he does stay out. That lap will not be competitive, but likely another flying lap coming right up. Rich Celtic wants me to say hello to Nordy, who is currently driving. I think Rich just wants it on the record that he is supporting the Haas driver at this race today. Of course, Haas running the Ferrari engine, really looking for a very strong performance at their home track. No, not Haas's home track, Ferrari's home track. Fortunately, the cars in this lobby are all of equal performance, because if they were using a realistic 2020 Ferrari engine, they would not have a chance around this very fast Monza circuit, as Wandel has invalidated on this lap. Cruzo Genis at a 1:19.5, Pippin not a spy for second place on the grid, as Mercedes and McLarens are sharing the front two rows. Not a spy just out of the pits, it looks like. All the drivers seem to be forming quite the train in the first sector with only a 72. We have seen this before. 2019 with an embarrassing display from the real life drivers. Only 2 managed to cross the line at the end of Q3. Looks like there's a bit more leeway here, so everyone should be okay, but everyone wants to make sure they have a good amount of track free to work in, while still being close enough to the car ahead to get that toe around the fast portions of this circuit. It doesn't seem that anyone has coordinated any sort of toe here. There are no drivers next to their teammate, it's just that everyone has piled out the pits and is looking for whoever they can find. As everyone starts crossing the line to begin their final laps in qualifying. Looks like everyone has made it, which is definitely good news. Osby has a bit of a lock-up into turn 1 there, which will not be good for his lap. Let's see how Kate Bad is doing behind in this corner. There we go, slight puff of smoke, but definitely much cleaner application of the brakes there on a very harsh brake zone. Wandel has set a new fastest lap of 1:20.5, but it's only good enough to jump his Renault teammate into P13. So definitely not the result that Renault were hoping for here, as it looks like Jesse Binman has also had his final attempt, and so they will be locking out the 7th and final row on this 14-car grid. Trujanis has now finished the session, so it seems that the McLarens will not be able to improve. Kate Badwood looking to improve at pole position, but not a spy. His main target. Oh, Turbo Swerve has gone a 1:19.4 into second place. Not a spy gets a 1:19.3 and takes second place back, possibly securing. Oh, Mill comes in into third place, but it looks like Mercedes have secured a 1-2 on the grid here. Kate Bad did not improve, but I'm sure he won't mind one bit there. Yeah, Turbo Swerve has not got there in time, and it seems that qualifying has come to a close here at Monza. So, after a very interesting session, We have the two Mercedes of Cape Bad and Not a Spy blocking out the front row of the grid, with the Ferrari and Red Bull rivals of Miele and Turbo Swerve setting up the second row with 119.4s. The two McLarens are a tenth behind in the third row, 5th and 6th, respectively, as Tori actually was on the final lap and managed to go P7 ahead of Nordi in the Haas car. We have Aralac and Brew Tracy round out the top 10 and round out 119s in this field. Then we have quite a substantial gap to the final four, who will have a free choice of tyre going into this race. So we have the other racing point of Opsin, followed by Welterine in the AlphaTauri, and round out the grid, the two Renaults of Wondell Wandering and Jazzy Binga. And I won't talk too much about this, but it seems that the incident at Ascari did impede one of Prune Tracy's final laps, and there are some less than kind words being exchanged in the drivers' chat. So possibly Prune Tracy feeling that he could have done a little bit better in that session, given the free track. We will see. And there is the qualifying order. A very tight pack in the top 10 there, with the leader setting the 119.2 and 10th place being less than 7/10 off in the 119.9s. The final four cars were a little bit off the pace there, but they will have the benefit of that free choice of tyre for possibly a set of mediums, or if they have it, a fresh set of soft compound tyres, which will give them a little bit more fighting in the early portions of this race as we head into the race session now. Now, of course, this is Monza, and one of the things that you must watch out for when driving a race at Monza is that the first corner can be very brutal. A full pack of cars heading down a very long start-finish straight into a tight chicane, and it's very easy to misjudge your braking point and head onto the escape road, or worse, into the back of the car ahead of you. So there have been calls before the race by the race director to just try and keep things as clean as possible going through the first turn, but I'm sure there will be a couple of drivers who will have an eye on taking a nice jump up the field. As we head out on the formation lap, where these drivers want to warm up their tyres as much as possible to give themselves as much grip as they can find on that start line to get the launch down that very long start-finish straight. Of course, they will also be mindful to not put too much wear into the tyres, especially the runners on used soft compound tyres. The four runners outside the top 10 have all opted for fresh medium compound tyres. And so they might be a little bit slow off the line, but we'll be hoping to make an alternate strategy call, possibly with a likely safety car, to launch themselves up the field and into the points. See the weave in there from Kate, trying to get as much heat into those tyres before the final corner and the lineup back to the grid. And it seems that everyone has managed to get through the formation lap cleanly, which possibly does bode well for the start of this race, but it's always more difficult when these cars are driving in anger. These cars line up on the grid. lights to go out on this Italian Grand Prix. It's 5 lights, and it's lights out, and away we go. That will have to be an excellent start from the Mercedes. And the patch shifting around quite a bit. Mill getting a poor start here as they hit the braking point into turn 1 and looks to be, you know, possibly slight contact, but everyone stayed roughly clean coming out of that first corner, which I'm sure the entire field will be very happy with. Mill being the big loser out of that first corner. One goal, one thing, Gainer jumping from 13th all the way into 9th position as we see a car run through that chicane. They'll have to give that place back to avoid a penalty. And already the two Mercedes looking to gap the field, running 1.3 seconds ahead of Turbo Squad. Not Spike has gotten the better of Kate Bad to lead this race. There are some big gaps forming in this pack already. It's a tight battle for 4th place here. Mill has regained a spot here on this lap. Poor start. Norton from 8th on the grid has already jumped to lead this peloton, but is a couple of seconds ahead of the leading 3 drivers as they go side by side through Parabolica, and Mill looks to take spot. True Tracy has been quite hit here. For some reason, my game is showing Torbjorn Weltering in 2nd and 3rd. I don't believe that is the case. So we'll just have to wait for the game to sort out. It's Prune, Tracy, Brashado and Aralak who have all been forced to pit, presumably for new front wings. And there we go. The game has worked out well. Those AlphaTauri should be. The 3 runners that all need to stop will start the race on soft on hard tyres and have remained on soft on hard tyres, so we're looking to keep their strategy going. Just run the soft medium that everyone will be planning here, but it will give them a little bit more life at the end of their stint. It's a 26-second gap there, so there's a lot to make up for this pack. As Mill has made his way back through, Opsin has crashed at Ascari and has brought out a safety car in the early portion of this race. That will give the back 3 a good chance to come up to the rest of the field. And that's very unfortunate for Opsin, whose race ends remarkably early, as we go on board with Prune Tracy in this trailing pack. Just try and see if we can assess the damage to his teammate. And no, the car has disappeared now. That is brutal for Opsin. It seems that all of the cars in that first pack have elected to stay out on their tyres. I find it unlikely that any of the cars that I've just pitted will be opting for new tyres. And so the safety car will not be providing new tyres for any of these cars, but it will give those cars that needed to pit after lap 1 incident a new chance to fight back through the field with that gap closed from 26 seconds to 0. As we see the train moving around Lesmos, cars weaving to try and keep heat in their tyres, and hopefully try and ward off the car behind to not go too fast. It wouldn't be an F1 lead race without some penalties for safety car quickness of some kind. As in this call, we will check the race director to see what penalties are currently being enforced. So we have a litany of collisions on lap 1. Prune Trace picked up a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and Brashado has picked up 2 5-second penalties for corner cutting. are both on lap 2. The game volume might be high compared to me. I will turn myself up. There we go. Is that better? But yeah, the car of Ricciardo has been given 10 seconds of penalties for corner cutting. I did not catch whether those corner cuts were legitimate or whether the game was just being the usual Codemaster's masterpiece. I'm sure if there is any mistake there from Codemasters, Ricciardo will go straight to the stewards after this race to get those stricken off. As of right now, Ricciardo has a 10-second disadvantage on the cars ahead, despite the bunching up of the safety car. Actually, I will check because I believe Ricciardo may have been able to serve one of those. No, so the penalties, no penalties have been served under the pit stops. There were just 3 pit stops for front wings. Yeah, safety car is in this lap, so we prepare to go racing again. As Not Spy starts bunching the field up so that the safety car gets safely away into the pits before the restart. Now, it's very crucial that Not Spy picks his moment here for Winterbolt because he will not want the cars behind to get a good run through Parabolica and be able to possibly outpower him into turn 1. He'll be looking, there we go, it's gone there. And he'll be looking in his rear mirror to see if Cake Bad is gaining, and Cake Bad is gaining by the look of things. Gap is down to a 10th, but cannot make his way through on that side. Dives to the other side. Turbo Swerve possibly not very happy about that swerve. And Not Spy retains the lead. Coming out of safety car as Cake Bad spins out on the exit, goes through the barriers and will fall to the back of the field. An absolute disaster for Cake Bad there, who was looking to take the lead of this race, but is now all the way at the back of the pack. As cars come around the 2 Lesmos here. Prune Tracy making... Oh, Jazzy Binman having trouble by the things, possibly a bad one, and hits Ricciardo going into the ball and miraculously not losing an end plate. There is damage on that front wing, but he has not lost it completely, so might be able to limp this car around to his planned pit window. Nordi, it looks, has had a problem at Ascari. There he is. And that is a missing end plate. That might be an early pit stop for Nordi. Now, it might be at a stage of the race where a driver can opt for the hard compound tyre to take to the end of the race, but it will not be fast. And it's a difficult decision for any drivers carrying damage at this point, as Nordi does opt to go into the pits. And there's a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, as One Goal One Dream fights weltering side by side through the first chicane and looks to have the move done, as some lag on my end by the look of things, possibly, causing some reshuffling of the field. Apologies for these slight technical difficulties here, as Wonderwall Team has run wide at the first Lesmo and completely lost control of the car and has had some collisions with the cars behind. Wondle is missing an end plate. I'm not sure whether Prune Tracy also lost a bit of carbon fibre there. It looks like he did. That's very unfortunate for this Racing Point. Not a good race so far for the team in pink. And now, I'd appreciate if game would show me the deltas between these cars and not just a litany of arrows. And not by setting a new fastest lap of the race with a 1:23.4. It could be. DRS has been enabled. Prune Tracy has opted to stay out on track, but it's just getting gobbled up by first Ricciardo, then Weltering, who are possibly going side by side into the chicane. And Arrowlight has a look as well, but can't get the move done, as Weltering holds on around the outside of turn 2. And this is just going from bad to worse for the Racing Point team, as Wandol has pitted and opted to go onto the hard compound tyres. Tatematic bringing up the very good point in chat that this division is the only division of the PC League to not enable ghosting of cars, which, you know, I'm sure Prune Tracy will be ruined after that spin from Wandolf. It's unknown whether he would have been saved by ghosting that or whether it was too soon on the racing line, but that is so unfortunate. Opsin checking in for an interview, it looks like, is watching F1's line through Parabolica, seeing if they're hitting the apex or not. Prune Tracy has fended off Arrowlap so far on this lap, but Arrowlap will have DRS assistance coming out of Parabolica. Now Prune Tracy will have DRS as well, but that lack of downforce on the front end will mean that probably will not have carried as much speed as he would have wanted to through Parabolica, and just cannot keep the position. He's just falling down the field here. As we go back to the front of the field, Not Spy has opened up an almost 3-second lead ahead of Turbo Swerve, as the cars behind are out of DRS range of each other for the most part. Tori is right on the gearbox of Cruiser Genes though, and this could be an interesting battle. He will have DRS going into the Ascari chicane. Kieran Lesno's tried as good of a run as possible, going wide, not losing the car, 6 tenths down into this DRS zone. Can he make any of it up? It looks like he will not be able to and will stay behind going into Ascari. And so his next thought is now turns to Parabolica to see if he can get a good run out of that corner and make the move on the start-finish straight. As Cruiser Genes has picked up a penalty for multiple warnings then, we might start to see those 3-second penalties racking up as these drivers accrue their track limits warnings. And so that will be a pivotal factor near the end of this race, as Tori, with DRS, try to get the run on Cruiser Genes. Will it be enough? It'll be a late move round the outside, going into turn 1. Cruiser just takes the inside line very sensibly, doesn't give Tori the room to get around and hold on to position once more, which has actually allowed Ricciardo in the second McLaren to latch onto the back of Tori, and there is now a bit of a DRS train forming between the McLaren and Alpha Tauri teams in a battle for 4th place. Prune Tracy has now dropped down into 10th behind the Mercedes of Katebag, who had that unfortunate spin on the safety car restart and is now climbing back through the field. Tracy does have DRS assistance to try and make a run into Ascari, takes the inside line. It's so difficult to take this corner too wide, and Katebag cedes the position, with Prune Tracy running very deep into that first corner. Definitely picking up a warning and possibly not having the best exit, letting Katebag make a bit of an attack into Parabolica, decides to sit behind and presumably look for DRS. Coming on the start finish straight, as Prune Tracy has had enough of that front wing and decides that he wants to get some new tyres on, get his full downforce back, and make a run to the end of the race, presumably on medium compound tyres? Yet to see. As Tori has made it past Cruiser Genes, and it is such a tight battle between the Mercedes and the AlphaTauri. Ricciardo has made it past Weltering, trading that position. As we see the 4 cars come round the first Lesmo corner, with Aralat right behind in the Red Bull car. There will be much battling. It looks like the 2 McLarens going side by side, both with DRS, going into Ascari. And that has not been good for either car. They've disrupted themselves so much there, and it's allowing Weltering to fly around the outside of both of them, going into Parabolica. I really feel like... Oh, and now Ricciardo has gone wide in Parabolica. And that was, in my opinion, a very poor decision from the McLaren drivers. Knowing that they're in a battle with other cars, they can't be fighting between themselves like that and compromise each other's lines through such a difficult corner. It's cost Cruzagenes and Ricciardo a lot of time, but they're only really saved by the fact that the cars around them are reaching their pit window. We see Notspy and Turbo Swerve have stayed out for an extra lap on those soft compound tyres, the only 2 runners on soft compound tyres that they started the race on. Aralat and Ricciardo had to pit early for a new front wing, and Jesse Beeman and Weltering decided to start the race on medium compound tyres and will be running much longer here. As Weltering has lost 2 positions there to the soft compound runners. He'll be very frustrated with that. Who's hoping that those softs will have started to drop off in pace, but it looks like they're still faster than those mediums as he picks up a penalty as well. Ricciardo really now coming under attack again from Weltering, making the move into Parabolica. Looks like possibly a bit of contact there. Weltering runs wide through Parabolica and stays behind, but will have DRS heading down the start-finish straight. As Notspy and Turbo Swerve have both now pulled into the pits. Now, have any cars behind been close enough to pull off the undercut here with the extra, the lap on the fresh medium compound tyres ahead of them? We will see. Let's go on board with... it looks like Mill has pulled off that undercut on Turbo Swerve, but Notspy retains effective lead of this race, currently running in P5 behind the 2 runners on fresher soft compound tyres and the 2 medium starters. The battle's been a little bit more spread out here, but at the front of the pack there is a train here between Aralat and Ricciardo on those soft compound tyres and Weltering on the aging mediums, who was struggling for pace a lap or 2 ago, but hopefully we're hoping that with the extra wear these softs have taken, he have a little bit more fight left in him over these cars, but it's not looking like he's getting very close. He's still 8/10 back from Ricciardo. Dangerous close, slipping out of DRS range, and now is a second away. We'll probably have DRS through this as those 2 soft runners go into the pits. Weltering did manage to latch some DRS at the end there, and now has a clear track ahead of him to try and get as much pace as possible out of these mediums, which are locking up into that first corner. Those tyres do not look to be in very good shape at all. He will not be happy with how this first stint has gone for him, as Cruzagenes has set the fastest lap of the race as he flies past his teammate coming out of the pits. Possibly an undercut there as Cruzagenes defends against the Mercedes of Kate Bad through that first corner. Notspy with a very interesting strategy that I've just noticed. Going 11 laps on the soft compound tyres and then opting for the hards, possibly interference from Jeff there, when at that stage in the race you expect the mediums to be able to make it all the way to the end. And Notspy will likely be screaming at his race engineer there. with Mill in the Ferrari just 2.5 seconds back on medium compound tyres that will be so much faster at this stage of the race. So Not Spy in the lead Mercedes has a lot of work to do to keep this effective race lead. Mill running very quickly on the car on older medium compound tyres and managed to get the move done into turn 1. So now, clear track between Mill and Not Spy, and it could turn into a very feisty battle as we look further back in the field. Tori there being the Alpha Tauri filling in a Red Bull sandwich between Turbo Swerve and Aralat, all within DRS range of each other. And all on reasonably fresh medium compound tyres as Tori gets past Turbo Swerve there. Thought it was possibly due to ghosting, maybe Turbo Swerve's paused to check the race director. I'm not sure. Aralat is just about in DRS range here. Although tries as hard as possible to stay on the back of his teammate, who is currently eyeing up a move on Tori and can't make it work into Ascari. That was a hell of a corner cut. And is 9/10 back and falling going down this final straight. Possibly needing to use overtake there to stay on DRS range as Turbo Swerve is right on the back of Tori. Will have DRS here and has a lap pressure tyres and we're looking to make the move back past the Alpha Tauri. Tries to be the last of the late breakers, goes very deep into turn 1. Tori has to leave the space and it looks like Turbo Swerve has made the move stick using the entirety of the track. That was one hell of a dive bomb there into turn 1. And so now the order between 5th and 7th goes back to being Red Bull, Alpha Tauri, and Red Bull. And 5 seconds down the road, Kate back in the Mercedes, looking to make a run back towards the top of the field, leading the 2 McLarens ahead. As we look further forward, Not Spy has preserved a 2-second gap to the Ferrari behind on softer compound tyres. I'm sure he'll be very happy with that performance. Now, of course, the longer this race goes on, the more those mediums will wear, and in the final few laps of this race, Not Spy may have the pace advantage again on those more resilient tyres. But for the time being, he will be checking his mirrors every corner to make sure that he can keep out of DRS range, because if Mill has the assistance of DRS and those softer tyres, he will likely get past, and the tyre delta at the end will likely not be very much, so Not Spy will have to make the move back past under his own power. But he's done a very good job of keeping Mill at bay so far, so possibly we'll be able to hold on to this race win once Weltering pulls into the pits, who is currently running 15 laps on medium compound tyres. Will possibly look for 1 or 2 more laps on this rubber before getting a new pair of soft compound tyres on to run to the end of this race, and possibly eyeing up a fastest lap on those tyres. Worth a valuable point in this lead. As we head back to this Red Bull car train, and Jazzy Binman on those aging mediums is being swallowed up. Turbo Swerve with the inside line into Ascari, and that was a hell of a corner cut. That might be a lethal overtake. And it doesn't look like he's having to light pass, but that was definitely taking far more of the curb than he necessarily should have done. As there's contact between Jazzy Binman and Aralat. Aralat goes in too deep. And give me a good camera. Oh my god! Aralat is out of the race! Oh, what a disaster there. It looked like... I'm not sure which car... I think it was Jazzy Binman who was coming round the corner after Aralat spun out. was completely blinded to Parabolica and just completely smashed into the Red Bull there. That is devastating for both the Renault and the Red Bull. They were just really blindsided there, as the virtual safety car that was pulled out for that is already back in. Now, Jesse Beam unfortunately was close to the pit window and so was able to box for a new set of soft compound tyres. But an absolute disaster there. And ghosting is looking like a much better decision by the second in this race. And as we follow Knots by through Parabolica here, there really is very little that can be done when there's a car in that spot. The barriers are blocking your vision all the way around this corner. And so if there's a car sideways that you can't see on the inside, you don't have very many options to evade at such high speed. As Weltering pulls into the pits for fresh soft compound tyres to go to the end of the race, and Not Spy once again takes the race lead on track with a 2.3 second gap over Mill behind him the Ferrari. It looks like Not Spy will be able to make this work despite the blunderous strategy with the harder compound of tyre. Go on board to the midfield where Cruiser Genesis is trying to chase down Weltering, but Weltering's fresher tyres will surely let him get a breakaway if there are no mistakes here. Weltering on the outlap will not be pushing for a fast start of the race and an extra point, but possibly will be thinking about it on the following lap if he can have clear air and possibly a tow from his teammate Tori. He'll go back on board with Mill, who is close to gap Not by 1.8 seconds, but those medium compound tyres have definitely seen better days, and so we will have to see if he can continue to make that gap up and possibly end up ahead over the Mercedes. So Weltering has made it past Tori here, possibly a little bit of team orders with Tori knowing that on those older medium compound tyres there's no use fighting his teammate, and now Weltering has clear air ahead to possibly try and set a fastest lap of this race. Flying around Curva Grande into the De La Rocha chicane, a big chunk of that curve. And now that ended Lesmo's curves there. You want to keep this as tidy as possible, which is obviously you are trying to push for a fastest lap, as Wandall sets a fast lap on the 122.1 on fresh soft compound tyres. Weltering looking to respond, and you want to push as much as possible to get the lap, but you're also aware that you're in the middle of a race, and with Weltering only P4, you won't want to make a mistake that will spin him out, possibly put him into the wall and cost him that those positions. So go try and stay as clean as possible while still carrying the maximum amount of pace that you dare as we cross the line with Weltering, and it will not be a fastest lap, unfortunately. Mill is now just a second and a half behind Not Spy. Time is running out for the Ferrari driver. There are only 8 laps left in this race, and you don't want to be fighting near the end of that, because the mediums do take a big hit around this high-speed track, trying to latch on to the turf surface with everything they have. And so Not Spy may be able to punch away in those final few laps if Mill isn't already in DRS range. As you can see, very difficult to keep the traction through Ascari, sliding slightly It should take that left, right, left, and the mediums really have seen better days, but Mill has closed the gap to 1.3. Not by breaking away a little bit through Parabolica, but Mill will definitely be looking to keep that gap as we go to a Weltering behind, who is almost within DRS range of Turbo Swerve on those old medium compound tyres. Now Weltering on fresh softs should be able to make this overtake stick without too much trouble, which will lock him in for a podium position. It is a good few seconds up the road to the front two, and so third place might be the best he can achieve in this, but that would still be an excellent result for Weltering on the alternate strategy. As Weltering now within 8/10 of Turbo Swerve in the Red Bull, and we'll have DRS coming out of the second Lesmo to close the gap. In the first sector, the yellow flag from Tracy by the looks of things, who possibly has to take to the escape road in turn 1. It doesn't seem to be anything of too much consequence. Weltering uses the DRS there to close the gap to 6/10 on Turbo Swerve, and we'll be able to set a move up around Parabolica and on the start-finish straight as we go on to the 21st lap of this race. Sorry, as we go on to the 22nd lap of this race. 6 to go for these drivers. If they want to make moves, they have to make them quick, because there are a limited number of overtaking opportunities around this track, and so there might only be a dozen or so chances to get that place that you want. Mill has not been able to make that gap up to Notsby, still only about a second and a half behind. It looks like he's possibly reached a limit of how close he can get here, as those mediums will start losing pace so much quicker than the hards ahead, and so there might not be much left to challenge here for Notsby. Get on board with Weltering, who is not close enough to make that move, and I will quickly check the penalty situation to see if that will be accounting to that front battle. So I know both drivers will have a very keen eye on that. It does not appear that Notsby has a penalty, and so if Mill does want that top step of the podium, he'll have to do it on track, as Weltering makes his way past Turbo on the start-finish straight with the assistance of DRS and the soft compound tyres to move up into P3 and the podium positions. Now, I believe Weltering may have had a penalty when I was looking through there, and so for safety, I assume he'll want to make as much of a gap as possible, and possibly with an eye on catching the front runners on their more worn, harder tyres. But I think 5 seconds is a big gap to make up in the time we have here in the final 5 laps of this Grand Prix. Turbo Swerve still is in attacking range of Weltering here, but it's obviously a matter of having enough life left in those tyres to make a move, and does not look like he will be able to, as the field is forming a little bit of gaps there. There's no sort of imminent battles, but Mill is within 1.3 seconds. We will follow him on board for a couple of laps to see if he's able to find that time over Notsby ahead. Check within DRS range, as the gap is now down to 1.1 going into this first corner. Now, the next DRS activation zone to be aware of is just before the second Lesmo curve, which gives you DRS on the back straight into Ascari. And so Mill will be hoping to get 2/10 on Notsby by then. Is now just a 10th away from DRS activation, and it looks like on lap 24 of a 27, Mill might be able to make a run at Notsby here. is just 8/10 down and closing, going through the Lesmos. Has a less than perfect run through the first Lesmo, but will be within a second. Will have assistance of DRS on this back straight. And now that's happened, Mill will have a much better chance at making a move on Not Spy here. The move won't be done here, and probably won't be done on the start finish straight of lap 25, but it just gives you that extra couple of tenths in the lap to close the distance and set up a move in the future. And it might be a bit of a last lap lunge for Mill here. He's just within a second going into Parabolica. So Lusky will have DRS again on this start finish straight, but he's lost a tenth through Parabolica. Does have DRS, but these medium compound tyres are not in perfect shape. Fortunately, he doesn't have to lean on them too much on this straight. Gets back within 9/10. But then this chicane saps all of that energy out again. It's such a tight battle here for the lead of this race. Both drivers looking to fight with everything they have with just 3 laps to go in this Grand Prix. Mill now within half a second going through the De La Rocha chicane. Ready for a good run through the Lesmos. Just to put as much pressure on Not Spy as possible. Will have DRS assistance and is now just 4/10 back. Headed onto the straight. The rear wing of that Ferrari opens up and he looks to make a run through towards Ascari. Not Spy going defensive on the inside, moving back to the racing line. Keeps the spot here, but Mill is so close. Going onto this last straight. Of course, Not Spy does have the strength through Ascari on those more resilient tyres. He'll be able to take it at more speed. But Mill is just too close for Not Spy to gap him by a second. And so on the start-finish straight, Mill is 6/10 down and will close with assistance of DRS as we go for our penultimate tour around the Monza circuit. Mill now within 4/10, 3/10 down at the braking point. Has to save that for another lap. Not Spy just ahead going round Curva Grande. And this is such a tight battle at the end of the race for this win. Not Spy on the harder tyres after a pit stop error, we'd have to assume. And he's had to fight for his life in these last couple of laps to keep Mill at bay after doing a very impressive job keeping him at arm's reach on the harder tyres for a good number of laps. Mill is now 8/10 back. Has DRS to close it again, but will not be close enough to make the move stick. And once again we come into Ascari where the reduced wear of those hard compound tyres gains Not Spy so much time. And gains time on the exit as well. Mill now dangerously close to dropping out of DRS range. As we round Parabolica to start the final lap of this Grand Prix. It is so tight at the front here in this battle for podium positions. Weltering has dealt himself into this quite well. It's now only 2.4 seconds back, but will not be close enough to make an effect on this race. Mill still 6/10 down and not able to make a move into that first chicane. As these cars fly around Curva Grande for the final time, as Prune Tracy has crashed at Ascari and retired from the race from 9th place, giving a couple of these cars a good chance at a point, with one goal, who had set the fastest lap last time I checked, looking to possibly get 2 points out of this, one for the 10th place finish and a second for that fastest lap. Mill 6/10 back as we round the second Lesmo for the final time this race. Has a good run on this back straight, but is half a second back. Will DRS be enough to give him a dive into Ascari? Not Spy trying to drag defensively. Mill cannot make the move stick, and it looks that Not Spy may be able to hold on here as Mill is gaining coming out of Ascari, but he's down by 6/10, and the line is so close here. Not Spy rounds the final corner and takes the checkered to win the Italian Grand Prix here in Division 1. Mill had a 5-second time penalty that promotes weltering into P2. And Turbo Swerve into P3, taking the final podium spot away from the Ferrari. Oh, that is so unfortunate there. Torri and Cruzo Genez taking 5th and 6th respectively. Ricciardo taking 7th place. Jazzy Binman likely to take home 8th place in this race. And we will follow Wondol, Wondream and Nordi, who are very close here on the final lap. These last cars are gapped by quite a distance, so it's unlikely that penalties will affect too many of them. But for Wondol and Nordi, it could be the difference. And Wondol, who I'm pretty sure is trying to hold on to 2 points here, he'll be hoping that he's been clean enough in this race to keep Nordi at bay as he rounds Parabolica and crosses the line in 10th place on track. And does Nordi have enough? We will see. Was that enough? It was not. Wondol does preserve 10th place and that point, or possibly 2. Weltering gets the well-deserved drive of the day. We're in that alternate strategy all the way to 2nd place as he carved through the field on those fresh soft compound tyres. What a fantastic performance from him. As we see Not a Spy taking in the Tifosi there after a well-deserved race victory for Mercedes. And so we see our final run order here, Not a Spy winning the race from 2nd on the grid after Kate Bad had an unfortunate spin on the safety car restart. Kate Bad managed to preserve 9th place. While weltering from 12th on the grid, choosing the medium compound tyres, moves all the way into 2nd place. What an absolutely stellar drive from the AlphaTauri driver. Turbo Swerve rounds out the podium. Mill, who was running P2 on track, is in P4 after penalties were applied, with Torri just behind in the 2nd AlphaTauri. Truzagenes and Ricciardo in the McLarens make up 6th and 7th place, with Jazzy Binman and Wondol, Wondream round out the points paying positions around Kate Bad. Wondol did in fact get the fastest lap there, so takes home 2 points for Renault. After qualifying on the back of the grid, a nice double points finish, and 6 points brought home to France. And what an exciting end to that race it was. Not a Spy defended so well on those harder tyres to first keep Mill out of DRS range, and then once that wasn't possible, just to keep him behind until the line. Nope, that's the wrong thing. There we go. And so with that, this Division 2 race draws to a close. Big thanks to all the drivers for giving us an excellent show around Monza there, and keeping it clean through Turn 1. I'm very proud of everyone. And I will see you next time.